we started earlier today, wherever your day started, hopefully in the same day, with aspects or views from China, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia. We've now had from Portugal, Singapore, India, Barbados. It's just like, how cool is that to get such a broad and diverse group from around the world and have your insights? I think that I'm going to kick off with a very targeted question to Sebastian and Aline, because I think that I'm really interested. That's a massive number, 10% saving. That's off the charts. And so having it as a case study and having it to really show others and get to that themselves, I think is a massive benefit. So as you went through the process to document and go through the interviews, etc., I think you mentioned that the right information at the right time in a useful way had to be planned up front, so that, and you created a database of these requirements. And you mentioned about the biggest decision makers having the least amount of time to make decisions, which is absolutely the point. It's like, how do you help them out with that? And it's almost like this challenge of how much input from those decision makers. So my question is, let me get to the question. And you're on mute at the moment, so you will need to come off mute at the right time. To get to that 10% saving, you have to plan a lot of detail. And how do you convey that detail in a way that you get the decision makers buy-in? You mentioned about using the database for defining commercial packages as well, and that was like another surprise, a benefit. But when you're into the minute detail, how do you back that up or abstract it? How do you actually communicate with the decision makers? Because that's what really needs to be done in order to make progress. How did you do that? Like, how do you plan at the really detail, and then you also communicate at the high level? How was that possible?
Well, we still need to prove that it is possible, actually. No, just out of joke, but everything is not a calm sea. And one of the presentations was actually interesting in counterpoint to ours, because we're showing the optimized process, but in the middle of the road, there were a lot of bumps. There was a lot of information back and forwards that was not correct yet. So yeah, everything was not a bed of roses, or however you want to call it. The interesting part, and once again, probably we're on the plenary panel, so it's interesting to say, but it's a lot about requirements. So we are hired many times as most of the times we are hired as an information manager on the client side. And if most of the times we are hired and the contracts have already been signed with most of the companies. So that puts you into an awkward position where you are actually asking for requirements to the designers, to the contractors, etc., but it's not on their contract. So you literally have to negotiate the requirements with them. So one of our main principles is always ask for what you can do, because of course you can do everything with models, but we're also always trying to be as pragmatic as possible and thinking, well, under this contract, where can we go? What can we do? So this is the first principle: be as sharp as possible for whatever you ask, because you can ask for 200 parameters, but no one will fill them anyway. So this would be one of the first steps. The other step is, if you're lucky enough to get hired before the project starts, and that happens maybe 5 to 10% of the times we're hired, then you can set clear requirements before you are hired, and then you don't need to enter in that negotiation again. So if you ask for simple things that people can do in the right stage, so you're asking for something on a project stage, then you can increase a little bit the bar for a contract, for a construction stage, etc. This is how actually we manage to get to those results. Well, it's actually a scientific study, so we cannot, the client didn't get money into his account. It's saving that we can, that we think is possible, but we did it by checking the before and after of many clash, for the clash detection, for instance. We checked what was there before, what was there after, and we have kind of 500 issues reports where we show before and after, and then we put a price on top of it. So if it was found on the construction stage, how much would it have cost to the contractor in terms of timing and in terms of sliding for the construction site. We also did it for the quantity takeoff, so checking what was underestimated, what was overestimated from the models, because there were also precise requirements for the modeling for quantity takeoff, and that helped us also to understand what possible savings we could be talking about. I'm not sure I completely answered the question.
So you touched on another thing there, the quantity side of things. Yeah, it was great. It added more to it, but it adds me another question. The quantities you mentioned. So you planning a database of what's going to be modeled so that you can track it. And you mentioned about the quantities and the deviations in quantities. What was interesting when I saw the graph was there were deviations on both sides of the bars on most of them. And so there's more of something and there's less of something else. And it generally, because we don't attribute planning as being the glamour and the hero in this workflow usually, that it gets lost and it just gets in the wash. It just comes out as it was okay in the end, or we managed to work through. So can you share a little bit more about where you found more deviation that was actually going to be bad for the project? Are there some examples of some of the quantities that were wildly off, or even though it showed a plus and a minus, it actually didn't come out as a cost neutral? Are there any examples in that quantity analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny thing, it was mainly a process issue more than a modeling issue. The end result in the models was quite accurate, so the modeling was quite good. In some cases, I'm just giving an example, but the process itself of getting the quantities out of the model was the big problem here, because there was a lot of miscommunication between the designer and the hired surveyor. But the models had the information, most of the models had the necessary information to actually check whether whether the model corresponded to the Excel spreadsheets of the quantities. In some cases, there were errors, the information was not filled properly, etc. So there was, after the submission of the project, of the technical design, there was a 3 weeks process of reviewing the quantities with the designers to make sure we could actually go up, for instance, for the architecture, go up to 85% of lines in the Excel that we could actually check on the model. The funny thing you mentioned is there were underestimated items and overestimated, which in the end could make the balance and say, well, but no, the underestimated doesn't necessarily make it cheaper, because the underestimated items will haunt you further down the line during the construction site, because someone will tell you in the end, oh, you forgot that, you forgot this, etc. Oh, the quantities, but sometimes it will not be said right away. While sometimes the overestimated items, no one will talk about them. In the end, it's not balancing things. You're adding the underestimated items will be a plus, and the overestimated items will also be a plus.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
So,
was mainly mistakes in terms of extracting the quantities.
okay.
Everyone in the end was able to follow the process of, although there was hard work for those 3 weeks with 5 different teams to check for the quantities and to make sure that we could actually rely on the models to discuss the quantities with the companies that were running to do the construction. And it
Gotcha.
was mainly to be able to defend yourself against any RFIs that could come later.
It sounds like that should be a specific service to do the modeling and find the overestimated quantities and just target on that and see what the cost savings can be at that early point. And maybe that would just pay for all of the BIM on the rest of the project and get that extra 10%. It's a great case study. I can't wait to find out more. Let's shift focus. We talked a lot about this mindset change that was required. I think almost all of you covered that. Vanessa, what does it take to actually change someone's mindset on a project? You know, not just to, you know, train them, but to really truly change how they think about BIM or information. Any stories, any, you know, where you've turned a skeptic into a champion? Anything there?
I think for the situation in Singapore, this is as a result of the environment that we are in, largely because of the regulatory requirements, you know, where you have to submit, you know, as a coordinated IFC model, and that there is going to be a coordinated checks on the IFC model, thus resulting, you know, in a very that there is a much more of a requirement for you to have an accurate BIM model with all the right kinds of parameters inside. And I think, you know, in our situation, I think it is by necessity that we are moving towards this stage where, you know, you must submit these accurate IFC models, or you know, you would not get to the next stage of your project. Yeah,
that's really cool. So
that said and done, you know, I think at least within Singapore, it's also a very tight labor market where it's difficult to find people, you know, to come into the built environment and establish a career here. And I think, you know, if we are able to extract more value, you know, from what we do by digitalizing things and making things more efficient, I think we would start to see that, you know, that there is a return on investment, because, you know, when you place a premium on things like accuracy, there is a cost to that, because you have to plan up front. That takes expertise and that takes somebody's time to do that planning up front as well. But it should be seen as an investment that, you know, will bring you returns down the road, where you can eventually expect, you know, a lower cost and more timely delivery of your project. And yeah, and I think, you know, that would also be a very strong advantage for us to move towards, you know, this accuracy in our information models.
That's a really interesting comparison, where in Singapore, there's a mandate that says you must do all of these things. And in the example there, Sebastian saying about only 5%, 5 to 10% of the time are they actually getting hired at the right time to be proactive and put, you know, an O&M register, or you know O&M on maintenance and stuff is an afterthought. You know, people think that it's what happens at the end of the project. How I suppose does that compare? I'm going to turn it to you, Shivang. How does that compare with you? You've been talking about your market where a lot of the models, most of the models come and they've got undefined content, they've got missing properties. So would you say that you're where in that process, or where in that, is there mandates that would be the best thing to help that, or are there case studies that would be the best thing to help push from an implementation side? What would be good to help less waste in the, or less BIM pollution, as you described it? You're muted.
Yeah. So technically, the first and foremost thing, yes, mandate are important. And I have realized that, construction industry will not move to anything new unless there is a mandate from government, unless there is something which is mandated, our industry doesn't move or doesn't want to move. We can go back to pen and paper also if things are not mandated. We love our history, we love our culture, we love things doing whatever way they are working. I meet couple of architects, couple of professionals. When I explain them everything about BIM and benefit of BIM and planning and information, eventually they end up saying, "Yeah, but we are anyways doing our projects and we are earning. Why should we care?" So yes, mandate is the requirement. And I know I work with couple of friends who are in Singapore market. So in Singapore, because there is a mandate, it helps a lot. But I figured my way out. So, every stakeholder, I tell them a different story or different benefit. If it is, let's say, an owner, I tell them, I take them back. I take them to the end of the process, that what will happen after the handover of this project? How will you manage and maintain your building? What will happen at that stage? And do you realize that design and build is just 20% of cost and time? 80% is your manage and operate. So with owner, I talk from that perspective. With consultant, I talk from the perspective of that, hey, if you don't give proper information model, the architect will come back to you. No matter how precise you model your MEP or your structure, but if the information is not there, you will have to do the rework. And taking that benefit, the architect will have time to design or redesign also certain spaces. And then the architect, I tell them that if you don't put information, how will you control the cost and the contractor and other consultants? They will not respect you. So I have these three different strategies to deal with three situations.
and I suppose that there's good and bad from a mandate perspective as well. So you can, when you mandate something and everyone just almost does too much. Whenever the owner says, "I want BIM on my project, I want you to do everything. I need an ISO 19650 project, and I need blah, give me everything." There can be way too much, and you can't control it in a positive way, and you can't be lean. You can't have a clean scope. What are the pros and cons to a mandate? You've said that a mandate is the only way to do it. Is that right? Are there any cons? Anybody saying there's anything negative about a mandate? Or is it all roses?
Not sure the mandate is always working. It helps, but not sure it's always working.
Well, okay, so seeing as though you've taken the bait there, Sebastian, so in your experience about implementing ISO 19650, I know in the past I've really loved your view on, it's not an all or nothing. It's a, why can't you, and maybe you could share your view rather than me putting words in your mouth, but what I see is a very practical implementation from what is working or what is good for you or your customers. Can you share a bit more about how you see things like that if a standard is requested like ISO 19650? What do you do for your customers then?
Always try to put the standard into context. Definitely. If you try to apply the entire standard, no matter what, no matter scale, no matter how good or how implemented BIM is already on the companies you're working with, so you always have to put the standard into context. I guess once and again, that's our main view as a company, I would say, or we try to have that into the culture and have everyone in the company always with that same motto.
Yep. And so turning that to you, Ian, you've been taking, when we talk about ISO 19650, you've been taking the whole of ISO 19650 and layering that into traditional project management workflows. What are your thoughts on, is it all or nothing? How have you seen it integrate with existing project management workflows? What are the things that it has highlighted that haven't been there, or things that maybe have also complemented it from existing project management workflows that are missing inside of ISO 19650? Can you share a bit more about that? Is it all or
Sure.
nothing?
Well, in my world, I think it is all, because you can't. The ISO 19650 is a very comprehensive workflow in its own right. And having mapped it out, it does come across all stages of the project. But before I fully answer that question, I'd like to pick up on the mindset issue. I think there is a huge mindset problem and cultural problem right across the globe in terms of picking up planning at an early stage. What we advocate is an extensive amount of detailed planning and project preparation before anybody else gets involved. And most developers and end user clients just want to get onto site now. They just want to do it. And I think that is a fundamental cultural problem that we've got globally. And until we educate everybody properly, we're never going to overcome that one. But coming back to ISO 19650, I'm not normally a huge advocate of standards because they can be very bureaucratic and over-emphasizing necessity. Having looked at, and I know, Clive, you've done this also, looking at 19650 in detail and looking at the actual flows, I think it is an incredibly well thought out standard. It's got a lot of information in there. As I said, the one thing I do disagree with is where they start the asset information process. I think that needs to be done a lot earlier, because I think the asset information is the most critical part of the whole design process. Because what is not thought about, and I can see Shirang nodding his head vigorously on this, is the end user client looking at the end game at the beginning. How is that end user going to operate that building? With what information are they going to do it? And I've had many instances where the asset information cannot be taken out of the model because it's not been set up correctly. The right data parameters haven't been put in and all that sort of thing. So there are some critical elements that I think have to be done to enable this to be taken forward properly, so we get the true benefits of looking at the whole life cycle. So I think, from my perspective, it's an all or nothing, because if you don't do all of it, you won't get the benefits of BIM and integrating the standard into the whole process. But I know there will be some elements that will want to try and pick and choose, and that's when it starts to get dangerous.
Interesting take, yeah. So I know that to give ISO 19650 some credit, that it's tried its best to take the purpose and organizational needs to define asset requirements as part of the assessment and need, and as part of that, essentially the EIR that kicks things off. But yeah, it's interesting, like if it's everything, how do we get people up to speed? You mentioned that's the challenge.
Yes.
How do you actually ensure that people are able to do all of it?
I think it's going to come from proof of the concept, and what Limsing are doing in terms of their case study information, if that can be trumpeted out about the benefits, and those brave souls that have taken it on completely and looked at this properly show the real benefits of this, so we can slowly turn this juggernaut of an industry around to a better way of working. And I use that. It is a huge juggernaut that just is going down a track that never change. Mm-hmm. But there is so much technology here that can help the process and improve life for everybody. It's just getting them, like those benefits and case studies, prove it. A lot of developers and end user clients want the proof first. Well, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change?
Yep.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So yeah,
finish
unless we've got those case studies, which is great to see them now coming out to show, look, by doing this, yes, it's taking a bit of time and money up front, but it does save time and money overall on the overall project. And as Siobhan said, what people are not thinking about is the 80% of the operational cost in the life cycle. And by looking at that properly, that is where the real benefit comes out of this. It's not the construction cost being reduced or done on time, which is critical. But the real benefit of doing this whole integrated process is the operational benefits.
So more focus on the assets. So
Yes.
Shivang said that these models are coming through with unclear or missing information, and the idea of depolluting BIM and using the workflow that results in clean BIM. I love that. So talking about that clean BIM approach, Shivang, and starting with clearer requirements and following through with checks. If we can do all of that, why do you think that still models are ending up with missing or unclear information? How can we make clean BIM the default?
See, the biggest reason that models are still missing information is because absence of vision. 90% of cases, people think that I am using XYZ authoring tool and it's BIM, so I'm doing BIM. And then majority of the authoring tools have hell lot of information. And people are so bored of that, entire list, they don't fill anything. They don't fill anything. Like we have a case study where we help a design and build company to come on Plannerly. And eventually we simplified their scope document so much that they are just having 4 set of information requirement at each stage, nothing else, just 4 at, conceptual design, 4 set of information need at design development, 4 at construction, 4 at shop drawing, 4 at handover. And eventually combining all this together, there is 20 set of information needs for operate and manage. So I feel that the industry still needs some guidance in this area. We have to, break down things for them, simplify things for them, because biggest issue, another is that people think that BIM is a rocket science. There are so many terminologies, so many ideas, so many concepts, and there are consultants who use difficult language. There are consultants who use easy language. That is also another BIM pollution. So we have to depollute that also. We have to make people, clear in their head. I feel that currently the industry is going through foggy brain syndrome when it comes to BIM. There is a lot of fog in people's mind. We need to simplify things. And the best thing that can help is we need to have example scope documents inside Plannerly. And then we have to show them that, guys, don't worry, at this stage, just look at these 4 things because you're in conceptual stage. And at this stage, at handover, you will need this set of information, something like that. Defogging is needed.
I like it. Being clear on the scope, on the requirements. Prior to Plannerly, yeah, it is difficult. Yeah, I mean,
no, so it's critical.
Critical, okay, critical and difficult, I think, as well. Yeah, the 20 items that you mentioned there, Shivang, we were at an owner's before starting Plannerly, so that was 8 to 10 years ago, and we came up with, but it took us so much effort, but we came up with 17 different information requirements over the life cycle of a project that we needed to collect. So that's sort of a magic number, somewhere around the 20 mark. But even using tools like Plannerly to be able to define and try and collaborate and communicate and get the right amount, you can still stuff it with a bunch of requirements that are not necessary. So I'd love to hear, how do you think about maybe features that would enable that type of, not don't add this. So more of a like reject your requirements rather than it being just accepting a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff. Love to talk about that. Any ideas there would be great.
It is not possible. It is not possible to, reject the idea. It is not possible. What the strategy should be the other way around. We simplify and we give them a sample set of requirement at each stage with a disclaimer, obviously, that these are just sample requirements. You can, add more, but this we feel with our experience, I mean, whatever we all are here, stakeholders, and we have experience, With our experience, we feel that you will need at least these 4 at this stage.
Yep.
You can add more. Something like that we need to do, because I did it with one of the design and build company. So I know that it is so simple for them now. It is so easy for them. They don't think about too many information requirement in early design stages. So it is their models are lighter, their IFC is lighter because they on open BIM. So they are always exporting IFC. So their IFC is under control, the quality is under control. And also this helped them to hire tier 2 and tier 3 city kids, youngsters in India who are doing their BIM modeling because they know how to model. And then there is only 4 set of information requirements, which they know that exactly, okay, I have to do only these 4 things in information requirement. That's it. So something like this needs to be done. Simplifying BIM is, simplifying the entire process by those who know the end result. That okay, ISO 19650, we have to do all. We have to ultimately take them to the end goal, which is operate and manage. But at the first stage, they should not be seeing the entire picture. At least in my market, I feel that this is the approach, and I have already started working on this approach. That whenever I meet, even in my presentation, I try to keep things simple as possible, as graphical as possible, less jargon, less difficult words. We have to understand it and simplify it. I'm not saying they're not important. Terminologies are important. ISO 19650 is important. Everything is important. But those who came from 2D CAD world to BIM in the flow of such and such software or whatever it is. They must have read somewhere BIM is next big thing. They must have used some software. Some require must have come. And after doing all this, lot of misconception, then came ISO 19650. So now they feel that that is more resistance for them because they are used to think in a particular way. They are used to think BIM from geometry point of view.
Yep.
So something like, we have to simplify ISO 19650 for them. You have to come down a step. We are on a pedestal ISO 19650, but we have to come down to simplify and then take them there.
Yep. We love simple. We love simple. Vanessa, what? Yeah. Go on, Ian.
Yeah, I agree. It's like when you in a car, you sat behind the steering wheel, you've got this complex engine in front of you, but you don't need to know how it works. You just need to know that it does it. And I think what Shivang just said is exactly the same. The client doesn't need to know all the detail of ISO 19650 or what have you behind the scenes. We just need to present it to them in a simplified process that they can do the essential bits, and we then put everything else together behind the scenes.
Yep, they get the results without the pain of having to read read the standard 7 times.
Yeah, exactly.
I think though that when clients request for information or they make it, a requirement to have a certain type of information within the models, they ought to know why they are requesting for it and what is the purpose of acquiring this information. Because there is a cost to acquiring information. There is a cost to somebody, creating that information to put in the model. And I think they've got to be quite clear about why they've asked for this information and how they're planning to use it. Because if it's not going to be useful, then there's no point asking for it. And I think that then comes back down to our original discussion on mandates. You have a mandate when you are quite clear about what kind of information you need to acquire. And because because you need this information for a specific objective or a purpose, it creates accountability because somebody then has to check that the information is in the delivery. Rather than just leaving it down to, people who could interpret what kind of information they think should be there, I think, rather should work backwards in terms of getting the clients to be quite clear-headed about why they're requesting for certain information. And if they've requested it, then they need to have that ability to check that the information is in the delivery.
Yep. Yeah, having a purpose, a clear purpose tied to it. Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to bring another question to you, Vanessa, about because you talked about mindset change a lot. What's I don't know, like an example or something that you've seen, that sort of a moment that opens the door, for somebody to have that aha and their mindset change? Is it a small win or a big win, or a failure that then they get the opportunity to see? Or is it leadership? Is it, how do you, within your team or with the customers you work with, how do you try to either engineer those moments to kind of, as I mentioned, open the door for a mindset change, or do they just have to happen naturally? What's your experience there in converting people to this dark side of realization that there is a better way?
I think the most transformational moment for us in Singapore, again, comes back down to the mandate. And, what Sebastian talked about, like having that requirement of that 200 parameters that needs to be inside the model. And somebody actually has to put it in because it will be checked. And if the information is not there, your stuff is going to get rejected. And when you come face to face, with a very comprehensive set of information requirements that you have to deliver, I think it forces people to put a lot more thought into the way that they are delivering these information models. So then they've got to be quite intentional about how they are creating these models so that it could meet the information requirements. So I would say, I think, the largest transformation for us by far is in effect because of the mandate, and that because people have to make that change, or they will face a really difficult time when trying to get permits approved. So, but that being said, right, I think, that just kicks things off. And I see now that because there is a minimum standard for what needs to be delivered, that, people within our industry also have a lot more respect for people, within the digital delivery trade, and the people who put together these information models. I mean, I've been in this trade for close to 20 years now. And I can say for sure that, that what I saw at the beginning of my career is very different from what I'm seeing now. There is a lot more interest in things like information, whereas, when I started my career 20 years ago in this trade, it was something that was not important, right? A lot of us in this trade were known as drafters, and I think it's a little sad to say that, in the beginning, maybe 20 years ago, drafters were seen as people who were not, who were lower down the hierarchy, when compared to people like architects and engineers, sort of like how, you have that doctors and nurses kind of parallel within the medical industry. We've got that, invisible wall between the people who design and the people who create this information. That was a long time ago, but today I'm seeing that boundary is increasingly being blurred. That there is a requirement for BIM professionals who understand design, and for designers that understand information. So I'm increasingly seeing that mindset shift. And that mandate has hastened that process.
So having a mandate is like cheating. It kind of forces everyone to learn more quickly and deliver better. Otherwise, you don't get paid. So I do think that if you have the ability to define requirements and contract for them in a way that people understand what they have to deliver, and then that being the way that they are paid based on agreeing that it has been delivered in accordance with the requirements, and only then releasing payment, I believe that that is certainly going to change the world. We've got a lot of what we've talked about in the last couple of years about that. It's certainly a difficult thing to implement because of all of the moving parts when it comes to payment. But yeah, I'd love to dig in more on that specific subject more. But Aileen, when you've been looking at this and the changes that you've been seeing and the big numbers, which are really big numbers, it's been, I'm sure, a great reward to see that the evaluation actually comes to something and you can kind of go, wow, this is good. And it's sometimes, you can make statistics say anything, but those numbers seem like, it's 10% savings. That's massive. What do you think, apart from just a metric, a data point, because people can be convinced on, ROI and it makes sense, but people still need to have the warm fuzzy feeling, the culture change, I want to do this for the right reasons as well. What do you think, or what have you seen, or what do you think will happen to help teams to actually get to the proper planning, not just following rules? And I think there's a big difference between, in Singapore saying this is the mandate and people have to go through and sort of follow rules and check boxes, compared to, if you actually really want to truly get a mind shift change, you show examples, show true numbers. But I think there's somewhere between there that there's a whole kind of warm fuzzy part as well. What do you think might need to be conveyed, apart from you must do this or you will get a punishment and it won't be payment, or the other side of it, which is you must do this to get that cost saving? So there's somewhere in the middle. Have you got any ideas there about the warm fuzzy stuff on the implementation?
Yeah, so like I said in the presentation, this was client's first project in BIM, but I feel like they had a good mentality from the beginning, where they kind of knew not the benefits exactly, but how BIM could help them, and they were really big advocates for that when dealing with the other parties involved. I feel like when you're I can talk about numbers and 10%, but when you talk about specific examples, like, we did this analysis with BIM, and that helped me save it this way, or that helped me avoid this sort of problem, I feel like that can really convey a strong message of this is actually on a day-to-day practically useful,
So it's
absolutely agree.
Say that again, Sebastian. Sorry, I missed that.
I was agreeing with Aileen.
Okay.
Just one thing. It's Aileen's study was actually on savings on project stage and construction stage, and I've been hearing a lot the savings for operation stage. That will actually be our next master's dissertation. Will be about operation savings. But just a quick note, so far it has been very difficult yet to prove that BIM is per se a huge cost saver for operation stage. You can prove that having an FM strategy in place, organized information is very useful and is very effective for cost savings. So far, proving that the extra added layer of BIM is really making a huge difference. It's been difficult to prove so far, since there are very, very few projects that actually get to that stage. So this is just an example, but let's say for the 100% of projects, construction projects that are being developed every year, maybe, let's say very optimistically, 10% are done using BIM. Then another 10% of those will actually get to construction stage. Maybe another 3% will have Kobe and will have the information and will have a golden thread and will be good for operations. And of those few remaining projects, when you actually show the cost to a client to actually connect different platforms. So let's say the BMS, the operation and facility management, the CDE, viewer, etc. When they see the cost of it, most of them, or a lot of them, also suddenly give up. So the few remaining ones are, there are very few examples, and well, the call of action is for real. So if you are actually working with a client that is already using it for operation management and that has overcome all those steps that I've talked about and see the real benefit and the real cost saving, well, feel free to contact us, please.
I love it. A broad outreach. I hope that somebody steps up. Yeah, we should shake the tree as well. The interesting thing with it. So go on, Ian.
Sorry, I'll just jump in on what was just said then. I mean, talking to Ralph on many occasions, most clients themselves don't understand the operational benefits that could be gained by looking at this. So again, there's another mindset shift that's needed at the client operational level to understand what they should be looking at to be able to embrace what we're talking about and get the benefits, which I believe are substantial if it's done correctly. But again, it's another educational process to bring the operational phase into the whole process that we're talking about.
Yeah, so it was easier when it was cool just to do BIM, and you just say, look at this BIM, and it's like 3D models, spin it around, the owner would go, I want that. And then it's kind of gone through the last few years where it's been much more like, okay, prove it to me. And I think we're a bit late in our, I mean, the fact that you guys are doing it now is great, it's brilliant, but we should be having this. I mean, we've ridden this BIM wave as an industry for 20 years of, you just say BIM and you show the 3D model and it's like magic. But yeah, with a cost sensitive and very tight margin industry, you would have thought we would have to have proven it a lot earlier than now. It's a great thing that we are proving it now, but yeah, we need more case studies that actually show the detail. And I think that's the point where you said, you know, it's this, people don't, it's not cool to plan out in that detail so that you can prove it later on that you followed a plan, you got models that met the requirements, you've got the right information for quantities and cost and for the schedule, the timeline, the planning, and also for operations and maintenance. I mean, it's not, you know, so many projects have gone through the BIM workflow in the last 20 years that have been driven by this desire just to have a cooler 3D view and have lost the opportunity to see where the benefit has been because they haven't been necessarily planned out like that. They haven't been in a way that you can compare what was planned to what was done and what the quantity effect was, etc. So what do you think that needs to happen? We talked about a lot of like training in general, awareness, helping owners get to that magic 20 properties or 20 line items that are needed. What do we need to do? Who's got the magic answer to putting these things together?
I think engagement is critical, particularly at government level, trying to get governments on board. We've talked about mandating, but until you start to drive it with purpose, you're not going to get the engagement because people will always have the cop out that they don't have to do it or it's cheaper to do it the old way when it's not. So some sort of engagement with government and key trade bodies to really start to change people's mindset, I think is the way forward.
And who's responsible for that?
Dare I say it, us in this forum. Step up and lead the industry.
There you go. There's a call to action. I love it. So I think we are coming to the point where we need to sum up. I'd love to hear from each of you just kind of a few lines as to what you would recommend. And you can phrase it in any way against any part of what we've talked about, but I think that there's a theme that's evolved, which is it's easy if there's a mandate, but it's not easy to get a mandate. So there's a lot of education that's needed. There's a lot of, from here to there. And Vanessa, maybe you can look at it from a different perspective rather than, it's the challenges with a mandate. What happens now? It's almost fulfilling the demand in a way that's actually going to be beneficial. So just a couple of words to how are we going to get our industry there? Shivang, do you want to kick us off? What are your thoughts on what needs to happen now?
See, I always believe that those who understand the higher game, the bigger picture, it is their responsibility, like all of us in this forum, it is our responsibility to simplify things. And in India, we believe that anything has 3 stages, read, reflect, and resonate. So, I mean, once you are ready, you have read, you have understood ISO 19650, or you have understood BIM, or you have understood the benefits, then you have to reflect on it. That, okay, I have to sit with myself, I have to reflect, I have to take notes. What is my actual understanding? That's when understanding happens. When you are reading it or you are knowing it, it's just a knowledge. So from knowledge to understanding. And then from understanding, you have to resonate with that thought. So read, reflect, resonate, then only you can simplify. And I'm going through the chat. Somebody is giving nice example of, going to doctor and doctor helping. So I am of an opinion that, yes, it is true that we are like doctors. Patient coming to us will not know the terms of, medical situation or medical treatment. And we cannot throw terms at them. We have to simplify it for them. That you are doing this and this is happening to your body. So probably your digestion is wrong somewhere. Something is bad with your food or something is bad with your water. This is what we have to, communicate. So it is our responsibility to simplify things. I mean, obviously mandate will help, but even when we reach at mandate, you very rightly said that the biggest problem with mandate is then people will just say, okay, this is mandate, let's do this much and let's get done. People will start becoming mediocre. So to avoid that also, eventually we have to educate people in simple terms. Otherwise, this will get more polluted. It is already getting polluted. We have to, simplify things. Those who understand, I feel it is their professional and moral responsibility to simplify. So let's focus on simplifying things.
I like simple. I think you've already given another simple. That lean philosophy of plan, do, check, act is 4 things, and you just broke it down to just read, reflect, resonate. That's 3 things. That's better. That's simple. More simple. I like it.
There's an old military saying, I'll keep it to the clean version: proper planning prevents poor performance. And ironically, the industry is good at planning the actual construction piece with all the programs and everything else. We've just not broadened that out to the whole end-to-end process. And that's where I think we've got to look at the proper planning for the whole process, not just the actual construction process.
So there's great views of that where you've got a detailed construction bar chart, Gantt chart schedule with infinite. I mean, I created these back when I was a planner on construction projects, and there'd be thousands of lines, and it'd be down to the like half-day tasks, and it would just be a mess. And then the design schedule is 2 bars if you're lucky.
Exactly.
There's this long, massive task that nobody wants to break down or can't break down. It makes it difficult to then track and control. Yep.
Exactly.
Vanessa, what are your thoughts? So you're on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, so first I want to address what you said about that magic bullet and what we all need. And I think, what is really helpful is the kind of data that Aileen and Sebastian produced, data on how it becomes more efficient and where the cost savings are when you've implemented a certain process within your project to make things more efficient. And I think, if you've got that data, can go towards justifying a mandate. And I think that moves us towards that new baseline where everybody can benefit from a more comprehensive and accurate set of information. And now that I'm on the other side of that mandate, I think what we are working with here in Singapore is that I think we can look forward to a good baseline of information to work with, and from there, I think that the possibilities are really exciting. We can using this set of information that we obtain as a baseline because of the mandate. I think we can look within our industry how to make things more efficient, how to bring about a better work-life balance for everyone within our industry, and how to deliver projects more sustainably, with better designs and better ways of working. If we could lower the carbon footprint, that our industry produces. I think, when we've got that settled, that information part settled, we can then, think about how we could use technology to produce better outcomes. Information itself is not something that, at the end of the day, it's not things that we can that makes the air cleaner, directly, like our buildings safer. But I think we could use that information that we have to create better outcomes and better futures for us.
Very cool. Yep, I like the statement. Use the data in your point before to justify the mandate. So I think it's like cutting right the way through from it's a great idea to implement a more standardized workflow and it's difficult to say no to, but it's more difficult if there's actually data specifically backing it up. I think it's been a missed opportunity for so many years to have it so easy that BIM is just asked for and then done. But not tracked as detailed as it needed to be able to then be used as this is why we need a mandate. Very cool. Sebastian, Aileen, some words to close us out.
Yeah, still back on the mandate. I would say keep it as simple as possible, but I guess that was the main trend. In the end of the discussion, we've been part of several standardization groups in Portugal already, and I think the main thing we're always trying to do is to deconstruct whatever requirements are being put forwards for implementing one standard or the other. As Vanessa was saying very well, whatever requirement you're asking, it's money you're actually, it's a cost that you're actually getting from the other side. So being very careful with what you need, with what really matters, and how you can get there. I don't know, Aline, if you want to complement.
I was actually going to talk about exactly like that. I feel like it goes back to the purpose, and everyone should understand the purpose of BIM for that specific project and why these things are being required, how are they going to be used, so that then they can actually deliver the information at the right time. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, everyone. I realized that last time I didn't get a screenshot of us going, hey! So maybe we could put our best smiles on and look at the camera. Perfect. I got one. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us at different times in your days as well. I hope that you can join either one of the breakout networking sessions or at least stick around for some of the rest of the sessions. I know that we've got some really amazing sessions still to come that take us across North America. We have Canada and also Latin America and the US represented in our final session of the day or the 24-hour period, wherever your date or day line crosses. It's been pretty epic. I started at 3 o'clock in my morning, which was quite nice. I probably am going to pause and grab one more coffee before the afternoon session, but I really appreciate everyone's input and involvement. It's been great. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.